So when we talk about supply and demand, specifically equilibrium, the question comes up, well, what happens when something changes? So we talked about demand, we talked about supply, and we said that those demand and those supplies are only really good at one point in time. And so what's going to happen is as those supply and demand curves change, it's going to cause equilibrium to come out. It's going to push away from equilibrium. And so what happens is that the market's going to have to adjust to that. And this is really the main part of why prices change. And so when you see how the price of food changes or clothing, right, this basic theory here is very vital. And frankly, this is probably the most important part of economics because this is really what shows the drivers of prices and how much gets produced. So again, our equilibrium, it's only good at one point of time. Now, conditions are always changing. Now, to remember what it was for demand and supply, I recommend you look back there. But when the demand or supply change, conditions then adjust. So there's really four things that could happen. All right, so let's go through in a second, look at them. Now, the first thing to always consider is this, all right, when an event occurs. Now, the reason why I say event is because it's just something that happens that affects the way it affects supply or demand in some way. It may be an actual event, it may be a piece of news, it may be just changing preferences, whatever. But something has happened. So when an event happens, you need to ask yourself three questions. First, does it affect supply, demand, both, or neither? Now, after you determine that, you have to say, all right, does supply or demand increase or decrease? And then finally, you say, all right, well, that happened. So what is the effect on the price and the quantity? Okay. So we talked about in previous lectures about the factors that influence demand and supply. So the one thing you want to ask yourself is, all right, I'm given this piece of information. I'm a consumer. I'm somebody who would buy the good. Do I care? If the answer is yes, it's going to affect demand. If the answer is no, then it won't. And then put yourself in the shoes of the supplier. I am somebody who produces and sells this good. This happened. Do I care? And again, if the answer is yes, it's going to affect supply. If it's no, it's not. Okay. So let's kind of go through the four unique possibility of changes. So first, let's say that demand increases. Right? So something happens that causes the demand to go up. All right, so our P0 and our Q0, these were our initial prices and our initial quantities, our equilibrium. Right? And so if we look here, let me go with that. And okay, so we had our original equilibrium point here. So when the price, when the demand goes up, it goes from D to D prime. If we stay at this price here, this is not perfect, but if we stay at that price, this demand curve, the original D, that's not there anymore. So at P0, here's how many units are demanded, but now here's how many units are supplied. So what happens now is we have a shortage. And as we talked about, when there is a shortage, it causes prices to go up. And so in this case here, if we stayed at P0, we'd have a shortage, and so it's going to go up. And just as the case with when we looked at demand, supply, and the equilibrium before, it's going to readjust. And we're going to readjust up here to this point. The point, again, where supply equals our new demand, right there. So we're going to have a new price and a new quantity. So what's going to happen over here, it shows, every single time when demand goes up, all right, if demand for a good goes up, it's going to cause the price of the good to go up, and it's going to cause the quantity sold of the good to go up. Okay, so that's going to be our one example. So that's case one. Now let's say demand goes down. Well, using the same logic, demand goes down. This original demand is no more. We're going to readjust. Here was our original equilibrium, P0, Q0. We're going to adjust here to P1, Q1. And so when demand goes down, causes price to go down, and quantity to go down. So now demand's pretty easy. So if demand increases, both price and quantity are going to go up. If demand decreases, both price and quantity are going to go down. With supply, it's not going to have that same relationship. Right? Now it will for the quantity. All right. Now this is always a good way to look at it. When it comes to quantity is always linked to the changes in whatever you're looking at. So when it comes to the equilibrium quantity, if supply or demand goes up, the quantity is going to go up. If it goes down, the quantity is going to go down. Right? Price, however, when you have supply, is going to have the opposite effect. So in this example, the third example, supply goes up. And so again, we are going to go from our original equilibrium point down to our new. We're going to adjust. At this, price goes down. Quantity is going to go up. All right, so when supply increases, price goes down. Price decreases, quantity increases. And so another example, the final case here is if supply decreases. And so if supply decreases, again, the market's going to readjust to new equilibrium. Price is going to go up. Quantity is going to go down. And so if we go through and summarize this, there we go. So this is just kind of the overall result. So if demand increases, price goes up, quantity goes up. Demand decreases, price and quantity go down. Supply increases, the quantity is going to go up, but the price is going to go down. And if supply decreases, quantity is going to go down, but price is going to go up. Now, this is really the main part, probably the most important thing to understand when it comes to economics, because with economics, this is key. Right? This explains why prices of different goods change. Why do clothing costs go up? Why do electronic costs go up or down? Okay. It has to do with their demand and/or supply changing. Now, it's not always clear because a lot of times this is happening at the same time, and we look at an example in a second, we'll kind of show that. But this is really the basic and the main core of economics. All right, so let's look at an example here. All right, so we're going to look at the market for notebooks. Right? And again, so we have our equilibrium price and our equilibrium quantity, P0 and Q0. That equilibrium is only good at one point in time. All right, so let's look at some examples and see what happens. All right, let's look at some events. So before we do this, the one thing I always want to emphasize is, at least when you're starting out doing this, don't try to think of it intuitively, right? Because what a lot of people tend to do is they'll try to think about it and they'll kind of mix themselves up a little more. So for example, let's say the people have a preference for a certain type of clothing. All right. Let's say that so people say, all right, so something happened and people want more of that clothing. Yes, it's going to affect demand. All right. Is it going to affect supply? And they're going to say, well, yeah, because the producer are going to want to sell more. Okay. Okay, yes, but remember the supply says that at each price, how many units are supplied. Right? So don't confuse the overall result with the supply curve and vice versa the demand. So again, we're looking at the market for notebooks. Right? So let's look at our first event. So our first event is that paper becomes more expensive. Now, clearly, when it comes to notebooks, paper is part of it. So the first question we ask yourself is, does it affect supply, demand, both, or neither? Right? Does it affect demand? So just for this case, assume that this is just the paper that goes into notebooks. Right? Do you care how much it costs, or do you care how much the paper in the notebook costs? The answer is no. Now, this is another area a lot of people get tripped up because people might say, well, yeah, because if it costs more to make it, it's going to be more expensive. So yes, I care. You don't care about how much it costs to make a product. All you care about as a consumer is how much it costs you to buy the overall product. So if it becomes 10 times more expensive to produce a notebook, but the price doesn't change, is that going to affect how many units you buy? Okay, and the answer is no. So does it affect demand? No. Does it affect supply? Yes. And so if we recall back to when we talked about the things that affect supply other than the price, we said the cost of an input. So if paper becomes more expensive, okay, supply is going to decrease. When it becomes more expensive to produce something, you supply less. And so if we look at this, okay, supply is going to decrease. All right, so that's what we're looking at. So if we have our supply here, right, again, this is why it's good, always good to graph these because it's a lot easier to see. So our supply is going to decrease. Right? And so when we look over at this, all right, here is our original equilibrium. Here is our new. All right? So here's our equilibrium price. When supply goes down, it causes price to go up. And when supply goes down, it causes quantity to go down. All right, so here's our original equilibrium. Here's our new. And so what happens then? The overall effect is that price increases and quantity decreases. Okay. All right, so that's one example. Let's look at another. So now let's say that we're looking at the price of legal pads going up. Now, for those who don't know what legal pads are, they're basically a substitute for, people either use notebooks or they use legal pads when they're trying to take notes, right, in paper form. So let's say the price of legal pads goes up. Now, because people either buy legal pads or notebooks, they are substitutes for each other. Right? And so, do you care if the price of legal pads goes up? Yeah, because that means people are going to be less likely to buy legal pads and be more likely to buy notebooks. And so it's going to cause demand to go up. Supply? No, because if you produce it, you're not going to produce any more or less legal pad or any more or less notebooks because the price of legal pads changes. All right. Now, the amount that you sell on the market may change, but not the supply curve. So in this case, we're going to have demand increasing. All right. So our demand is going to increase. And what's going to happen is we are going to go from this equilibrium point to this one. And so price is going to go up and quantity is going to go up. Okay. Price decreases, quantity increases. Finally, now let's say that there's two events happening. More people are going to school and the price of covers is going to decrease. Right. So if more people are going to school, that's going to affect the demand because increased number of buyers. So demand is going to increase. Right. Now, what about the supply? Right. Yes, it's also going to affect the supply because what you're going to see is that the price of the cover goes down. That's the cost of an input, the cost of making it. So if it becomes cheaper to make, you're going to make more. And so what's going to happen? Supply is going to increase. So if we look at these two cases, we said when demand increases, it causes both the price to go up and the quantity. When supply increases, when the supply increase pushes the quantity up, but it pushes the price down. So in both these cases where demand going up and supply is going up, it's causing the quantity to go up. So the quantity is going to go up. But let's look at what happens here. All right, so again, both demand's going up and supply is going up. So let's just look and say that the supply increase is a minor one. All right. So if this is the case, to where here's our new equilibrium, you can see that our price did go up and our quantity also went up. But now let's say that the effect on the supply was big. So let's say that the price of the covers that are on the notebooks went down by a lot. And so let's say that this was a big effect here. So now here's our equilibrium. And so now here's the price. And here's our new quantity. Now quantity still goes up, but this isn't from straight, but price in this case went down. And so what happens is when you have a lot of things going on, this is very common in the market, you have an event, you have the case where, when things are conflicting happening, you may not know what's going to happen in theory because you don't know the effect of it. And this is especially important when you talk about more on a large scale, but you talk about broad government policies because there's a lot of things going on that may affect prices and quantities, either of products or labor or goods in the market. But the overall result may be unknown. So again, with these products, a lot of things, or a lot of these, there's a lot happening. But I mean, the basic idea stands where, demand, supply, this is what explains why prices go up or down, quantity goes up or down.